Somewhere between the scandal that's enveloping Chesapeake Energy and the rather dull results that came out of some of the big oil majors is a brewing couple of stories in Latin America with oil companies Pemex in Mexico and Ecopetrol. And Raul, you had a deep look at Ecopetrol. It's really an amazing story. They've grown up to be sort of this $135 billion company, same scale of BP. What's going on there? How have they managed to pull this off?
Well, two things. Ecopetrol has been able to essentially invest very effectively on a number of different oil wells in Colombia, and also it's very well run. The government is in control, but it lets pretty much...
It's a rare story of a government that knows how to run an oil company. I mean, they're delivering 50% EBITDA margins, which is just, I mean, you look at most of the sort of the Western ones, I mean, we don't have anything remotely looking like that.
It is very impressive. One of the key metrics that you look for in oil companies is the replacement rate, and that's the rate at which they discover new reserves compared to how much they're using. And the Colombians have done extremely well. And as you say, that there's a real contrast building up in Latin America between the real shockingly bad run ones, right, like the Mexican oil company, the Venezuelan one. They typically wall themselves off from the rest of the world, and then you have the likes of Ecopetrol and of course Petrobras being a slightly intermediate example, which are a bit more open to inward investment, to doing extremely well.
Now, you said there are some, I mean, you're pretty bullish on Ecopetrol, but you also said there's a couple things to watch and worry about there, right?
Two things are important to notice. One is that the company is suffering in many instances from attacks from, essentially Marxist guerrillas that are still in Colombia.
Those pesky guerrillas always get in the way.
Attacking the infrastructure, and that is a cost.
Right.
And then there's also the fact that, the price for the shares has skyrocketed.
They're trading on a really healthy multiple now.
Exactly, but also because a lot of investors see Ecopetrol as essentially the play in Latin America for oil.
Right.
And so
maybe even more so than Petrobras to a certain extent, right?
To a certain extent,
yeah.
Yes. And so they're piling on that stock, which has risen, and even a lot of analysts in the country are putting a sell rating on.
Really, they've gotten there already
because it's really up there.
Let's go to the other end of the spectrum, because I mean, Pemex, as you mentioned, is just at the other end of the scale, really, of Ecopetrol. And what exactly is going to change things there? I mean, there's a little bit of a sense that maybe
it's a real political roadblock that you have in Mexico. Obviously, they've wanted for many years to keep their hands on the oil, and as a result, they're just pumping less and less of it. So the production is down about 25% over the past 8 years. Over the same period in Colombia, they've actually increased production by 1/3.
But now there's some noise in the political race that might to help, just maybe a little glimmer of hope.
It's a possibility. They've been gradually inching towards reform for quite a few years in Mexico, and the problem is the constitution makes it very difficult for them to sell any kind of outside stake. So they have to really have a lot of legal tweaks before they can do anything very creative.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on both of these interesting stories down in Latin America, and we'll be back with more Breaking Views next week.